I'm Stephen Price. I've been a broadcaster, writer and journalist for over 20 years, and in this monthly series I'll be talking to leading industry figures about TV and film. I'm delighted to be able to welcome my first guest, Liam Hamilton. Liam, thank you for coming.
Thank you for the invite, Stephen.
Thank you. Liam is Director of Content at Scottish Television, was the launch editor of GMTV, was the producer of This Morning, Managing Director of London Weekend Television, Controller of ITV Daytime, pause for breath, Managing Director of Prospect Pictures, and intriguingly, for a few short months, MD of Peter Powell's World Pop.
.com,
important. A true TV renaissance man. Liam, as we sit here today at the back end of August, the autumn schedules are gearing up, and I'd like to start with the first skirmish of the autumn, which was the arrival of Channel 4's The Great British Bake Off.
Yes, an intriguing one. It caused a bit of a kerfuffle. When Channel 4 announced that it was going to go on Tuesday, 8 o'clock, the BBC had a bit of a paddy about it because, lo and behold, they'd put their own new cooking show, rather, in that very slot. But after a little bit of complaining and trying to find a referee to say that this is not allowed, they accepted the realpolitik of it and decided to move their new show to Thursday at 8 o'clock. So strike one to Channel 4.
So that starts on August 29th, so that's the Tuesday. But actually, the autumn schedules really, the big fisticuffs, well, not the big fisticuffs, another fisticuff will start on the Sunday. Now, this is the bank holiday, and in my experience as a scheduler, what you tried not to do was launch a brand new expensive drama on the August bank holiday, largely just because people are away and their minds are on other things, and there's a day off the next day, so people are off on somewhere else for the long weekend. But it's become a little bit of a vogue after last year when ITV launched their brand new Victoria on Sunday, Monday, partly in order to avoid starting up against Poldark, which was against it. Well, this year, rather oddly, or interestingly perhaps, Victoria is starting on the same day, Sunday. But BBC One have got a brand new drama called Strike, which is a detective series written by J.K. Rowling under
a different
pseudonym,
name.
Yes, Robert Galbraith, I believe. And they're playing that against Victoria. And just sort of looking at the schedule, it's quite interesting. You can see the two channels looking at their shows differently. So Strike, they're both on at 9:05, which in itself is a little bit odd. I don't know what's going on there. But even in these days where there's so much choice for people to watch television, there's still a thing as an inheritance. The programme on before still matters.
Absolutely.
So if it's a big, strong programme. And it's quite interesting that BBC have got a documentary, an hour and a half, 95-minute documentary on Princess Diana.
Another one.
Yes, I don't know why they're all on this time of the year. Something must have happened. I missed it. Whilst opposite it, ITV, I think, have got a programme called The Best Adverts in the World or something. Which is interesting, but you've got to think to yourself that Diana's show will beat.
I think it's laudable and perfectly decent of ITV to do programmes about ads. It's what pays the bills. So let's not be shy, and I think ITV embrace it.
Yeah,
they've got Ant and Dec winning ads and whatnot. You know, it is commercial television. However, as a lead-in to a very important drama for them, the second series of Victoria, when BBC have got another Diana documentary, but I'm sure it'll be very well done. Yeah. That is not likely, I think, to deliver a winning handover, a bit like a relay race. Or I don't think the baton will be handed over with ITV in front at 9:05 on Sunday night. That said, again, curiosity might well work for the BBC. It is being billed as J.K. Rowling and all this kind of stuff.
Yes.
So there'll be a curiosity value there. However, I think Victoria is a big brand now. It did very well in its first season. It saw off Poldark. ITV won that face-off last bank holiday weekend. And I think they've got every chance of doing it again with Victoria. And I certainly think it will pan out that way over the run of series again. ITV's runs tend to be a bit longer than
Yeah.
BBC's. And I think also the BBC J.K. Rowling thing is on a Sunday, Monday. So that other tactic.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's all like nothing new under the sun, is there? So now, so after Victoria launched Sunday, Monday, the August Bank holiday last year, BBC One, I'm sure they thought of this themselves. I'm sure they didn't look at the Radio Times from last year, but we'll do the same. And then there's only 3 episodes of Strike, which is, there could have been a better name for it, but anyway, that's the name of the detective.
That's the name of the detective, yeah. And I think it's 3 different stories that actually get over 7 eps or something.
Well, it's 3. I think there's 3 episodes at the beginning.
Yeah. The Cuckoo's
Calling.
Yeah.
I don't know what he's calling, but there he is calling away. And so it's Sunday, Monday, and then the following Sunday. And of course, the other thing about Victoria is, just sort of quickly go over the history of these sort of costume dramas on ITV and the sort of world we live in now, where, we all remember Downton Abbey. How could we ever forget it? A big hit for ITV. But it was made by Carnival Pictures, who are owned by NBC Universal, the American broadcaster, who in turn owned by Comcast, a US media giant.
Yep.
So whilst ITV got lots of money from advertising revenue, spot revenue, it's in terms of international sales and any ancillary revenues, that was all essentially going to Comcast. Ultimately, so Victoria, made by Mammoth Screen, owned by ITV, means that they'll have not only the advertising revenue but also international sales and so forth. So it's not so the pressure on Victoria is to win in the schedule itself, to win the slot, and also to justify, which is probably your point, justify more series which are important for international sales. Mr. Selfridge, for example.
That was meant to do that kind of job and struggled a bit.
It did in the schedule.
In the UK, it wasn't the slam dunk hit of Downton or Victoria Series 1. We'll see about Series 2.
That's right.
Carnival would have made a nice return on Downton. A show that arguably no other territory in the world would have commissioned. A very traditional costume drama, echoes of upstairs, downstairs, replete. But lo and behold, not only does it work very well in the UK, probably a reasonable bet, but it did spectacularly well internationally. So trebles all round at Carnival. As you say, what ITV are hoping is that same magic will strike with Victoria. It'll be a hit domestically. So lots of ad revenue in the UK, hopefully the odd BAFTA and whatnot award.
I'll vote for it.
But crucially, international sales with all the money flowing to ITV PLC's bottom line.
Yeah.
It's an interesting equation, though. It's what the previous chief executive, and I've no reason to believe that the soon-to-be new chief executive of ITV have set their stall out to own that value chain, to own more of it.
Yes.
I think it's in their annual report and accounts that their aspiration is to own or to have 60% of the schedule, more ideally, being produced by ITV companies, of which there are now many. It's not just ITV.
Yes.
Yes, get that. Can see the commercial logic of that. But on the other hand, would you really want to cut off a supply chain which has historically delivered you things like Downton,
Abbey,
like The X Factor, like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, all produced by companies who are not part of ITV PLC. I think ITV would have been a poorer channel without those kind of shows on it.
Yeah, definitely. No, and it's we'll come to entertainment in a minute, but just sort of that final point about there's that terrible jargon about vertical integration, isn't there? Where, and I don't want to pick on Mr. Selfridge. It was a perfectly good show, but whilst it was making money internationally, it was becoming a bit of a liability in the schedule because it was starting to lose the slot, and it lasted 5 series, I think. And in the olden days, when international sales were maybe not less important, but it was less to the front, that probably would have been cancelled after 2 or 3 series, I would have thought. But longevity in the domestic schedule on ITV was down to its international sales as much as its performance in the UK. So there's a sort of sense of PLC strategy, not slightly at odds with the domestic schedule strategy. But actually, if ITV PLC come out better for it, then it's probably worth a price worth paying in the next couple of weeks, the X Factor will begin, and then hot on its heels, Strictly Come Dancing. And these shows have been going on Saturday night now for over 10 years.
Wow, amazing.
I know, it's extraordinary, isn't it? And I remember when Strictly Come Dancing was announced, and I was at ITV at the time, and I remember thinking, and I wasn't alone, I have to say, but I remember thinking, ballroom dancing on a Saturday night, oh, don't be ridiculous, how's that going to work? Anyway, completely wrong, not for the first or the last time, I have to say, but it's developed into a bit of a two-way battle now between these two shows, and lately, of course, Strictly's got the upper hand.
Yeah, it has, and I think Strictly is a phenomenal entertainment beast. As you say, there were many people sceptical about its revival. I mean, it is its parent show, Come Dancing, it's an incredibly old show.
Yes.
Now, I hesitate to almost say old as if there's some value implied by saying old, as if old's a bad thing. No, I actually think maturity experience is a very good thing, and Strictly Come Dancing, a reinvention of an old, rather more traditional approach to ballroom dancing, has been a triumph. And I think, quite rightly, a whole host of people at the BBC associated with that, not least of which Bruce and the decision to have him as host. I saw Jane Lush talking the other day, who was the former head of entertainment at the BBC, about the lunch at which that deal was done, so to speak, for him to... Now, that it's a touch of genius.
It was inspired, wasn't it?
Touch of genius.
And it also, it's a bit more sentiment about it, but it means that he ended his career and his life
on the biggest TV show.
On the biggest show, and he's always done that, and I think that's a great thing. But also, he will know that he left the show beating ITV's X Factor when a few years ago X Factor was unassailable, averaging something like 14 or 15 million and peaking at some ludicrous number like 18 million. But it's been on the decline ever since. And I suppose the point about the X Factor is that it got nearly 8 million on average last year, which was slightly below
plus one in consolidation.
Plus one in consolidation, all that. So its total audience on television was nearly 8 million, 7.5, 8 million.
It still makes it a very big show.
It's a big show. The trouble is, I suppose, is because it costs so much to make.
Yeah.
8 million, whilst it's a hit, it's like, is it a big enough hit? Is that fair, or do you think it's...
Yeah, I mean, I think again, one would need to know something of the entrails of Psycho and ITV's relationship and literally the contract that exists between them. For some time, I think ITV tried to square the circle about getting value out of X Factor by making it longer and longer.
Yes, definitely.
More episodes, stretching it, Extra Factor on ITV2, etc.
Yeah.
I suspect that at the end of the road, where that's an acceptable target, deliverer of value, it really now does have to do bigger numbers or cut the costs. And I don't imagine Simon Cowell is particularly in the market of cost cutting.
No.
But as one wag would say many years ago, in the kingdom of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. And I think that still applies to the X Factor, unless and until ITV have a handful of other shows capable of doing 8 million for less money, cost less money, then I think it's going to be there. Now, of course, that may be partly why ITV acquired The Voice.
The Voice, well, yes. And also, of course, back to the point we made over Downton and Mr. Selfridge and Victoria is they bought Talpa, who make the Voice. And it was interesting, wasn't it, that the Voice was on BBC One. Started off really strong and then gradually sort of fell away as people, I think viewers kind of clocked, well, this is just sort of the X Factor in January, really. And, it's not enough difference. Came over to ITV, did all right in January, did fine, about the same as it did on BBC One, but it's not as powerful as the X Factor. So whilst they've sort of enhanced their schedule by buying a format which they can own, and they own.
No, I think that's a crucial element of it, that they own The Voice, and should The Voice have a long life internationally in terms of format sales and whatnot, and it's doing pretty reasonably as far as I'm aware, then that's their money now.
That's their money.
They've paid good money to get it by buying Talpa.
Yes, they did, yes.
But it's a long-term, I would imagine the argument would be partly that's a long-term banker to have on the shelf. Yeah. It's a format that will never go out of fashion entirely. It might never be the number one show, but whether it's in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, if you want a singing talent show,
Yeah.
we can pull The Voice off the shelf.
If you want, if you've got a winter schedule, January, February, March, and you want a show that's getting 6 million viewers and winning the slot or doing reasonably well and getting reasonable numbers of young viewers, that's a good show for you, isn't it, if you're the director of ITV?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
To some extent, one has to follow the money on these, Stephen. I mean, when you were scheduling ITV and had your highs, your hands tied to some extent in those immediate 2 weekends before Christmas, it was because the cliche would be that the ad revenue had dried up and there wasn't. ITV would literally not get a return from spending £1 million on a show on Christmas Eve or something like that. Yeah. So lo and behold, it didn't.
It didn't, yeah. But it's funny when it did, because I remember a long time ago when Ant and Dec, I think we had a Saturday night takeaway on Christmas Day, and Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, when that was rocking, that was doing really well. There was a real fight to get it on Christmas Day, because ITV, which doesn't normally compete on Christmas Day, to do it. And then more recently, the Downton Abbey, of course, which largely, first of all, the first Christmas Day it was on, it won 9 o'clock, just about, because viewers still watch BBC One in a rather traditional way on Christmas Day. It's very interesting, from the Queen at 3 o'clock, which is on both channels.
Movies and whatnot.
And movies. And the Queen on both channels.
EastEnders special.
EastEnders special, Doctor Who, Strictly Come Dancing. We could do the schedule now, actually. And ITV would often have a Midsummer Murders Christmas special, or a Poirot Christmas special, or some sort of Christmas For the Love of Dogs Christmas special, Emmerdale, Coronation Street, a film, and that would be it. And you'd sort of be glad to get on with it and get into January. But so
happy days.
Happy days. So it's sort of interesting. But that period between now and Christmas, it's interesting, isn't it? That for instance, now there are a couple of dramas on. I think Trust Me is on, and a couple of interesting documentaries, but no big shows play in August. But suddenly, August Bank Holiday, September, and we're away. Why do they do that?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, from an ITV or from a commercial channel's point of view, certainly from ITV's point of view, it's about ad revenue. Something like 40% of the entire year's spend from ad revenue will be in the last quarter. Yeah. So from now on in October and November, the biggest months by far for ad revenue, which is partly why there's this little, should we spend money in December to the same extent. So. Yeah. ITV is putting its biggest shows out in the time of the year when there is the most ad revenue to be had. Now it's you could argue a bit of a chicken and an egg about that, in that the biggest shows get the biggest audience, ergo you get the biggest ad revenue. Wow, isn't that an amazing equation? And the reason why the most shows tend to, slightly echoing our conversation on Bake Off earlier, pound to a penny, a show that transmits in November is going to get a bigger audience than a show that transmits in August, almost irrespective of its quality, because it's cold and dark. I mean, again, I think in terms of the numbers on Bake Off, not that we're obsessed by Bake Off,
not in any way,
will be impacted, as we're now getting into the period when it's going to be dark at 8 o'clock. Being dark at 8 o'clock, and perished thought some traditional British autumnal rain, that will boost the audience. But getting back to ITV and the commercial channels, of which Channel 4 is one, of course, that's partly why. I mean, it'll be dark, miserable, wet nights. TV viewing will go up. So even the staples like Coronation Street and Emmerdale will get far bigger audiences in October and November than they will in July and August. So ITV will make more money, ergo it's prepared to some extent feed that beast. Now, the other commercial channels aren't quite so driven as ITV by that bubble, but they do benchmark. But to some extent, I think to a great extent, commercially, ITV still leads. And if ITV is pushing the market, putting its best shows out, trying to get the biggest audiences, the rest, the commercial channels, are dragged along with that. BBC, I think it's probably just more simpler. That the weather and the dark nights and whatnot determine that there's a lot of people available to view, and the BBC is supporting that one.
And it's competitive, but it can afford to do things. you remember when Sherlock first launched? I think that launched in July, and I remember
Something that a commercial channel wouldn't. Well, you
Well,
never say never.
I say never, no.
But you know, would really. Wait a minute. Are you
Yeah,
sure?
are you sure?
How does this work? You know, you'd have to make a really compelling
Yeah.
case to spend as much money as a Sherlock drama would have cost
exactly.
on a commercial channel to launch it in the summer.
Yeah.
The basic equations don't add up.
So, you know, as a viewer, rather than a gnarled TV executive, Liam, anything you're particularly looking forward to in the autumn, or?
Yes, and we've touched on a few of them, professionally and personally. Be very keen to see how Bake Off is done. I mean,
Yes.
it's a challenge, a 75-minute show, ad breaks in the middle of something that was arguably quintessential English warm bath, you know, literally a tent in the middle of a cricket field. Or that's how
made in the 1950s.
So that'll be interesting. Dr. Foster is a drama.
Yeah.
Cold Feet, one of ITV's
ITV.
bigger drama offerings.
Yeah.
I'm a Coronation Street viewer. I always look to kind of big and good storylines in Coronation Street. However, and there's a bit of a kicker here, there's lots on the terrestrial channels rattle through that I'm looking for. But I suspect, like many of you are out there, there will be attractions on the Netflixes and the Amazons, which is going to the danger from a commercial channel point of view is that viewers, not just me, get slightly pulled away from the terrestrial channels.
Yeah.
Maybe not for the launch of Victoria or the launch of Dr. Foster, but for more workaday programmes get pulled away by the attractions on Netflix and Amazon and indeed Sky Atlantic. I'll be rushing home from this to see Game of Thrones.
Of course.
And that, if it counts as an autumn programme, then the final ep next week will be a big attraction in our household. But they've got interesting stuff, and I use that in the proper sense of the word, like Berlin Babylon.
The German language. Weimar Republic show.
Sounds really interesting, and I will definitely be having a look at that. I mean, I think again, different subject probably for another time, Stephen. But you know, the advent of Sky Atlantic and shows like Big Little Lies, Billions. You know, these are great shows. And now, if Sky Atlantic didn't exist, would I be getting those on Channel 4 or ITV, or is this you know, an extension of the TV marketplace? Certainly, I think the Netflixes and the Amazons are. Is Grand Tour 2?
Grand Tour 2, I think. Yeah, I think
this autumn.
It's launching this autumn. Yeah, I think it's.
And I think it's meant. I mean, it was talked about being on in Amazon terms in October. Again.
Yeah.
Be keen to see that.
Yeah, but again, of course, you know, even in these new TV terms, you know, they're launching it in October and not July because they know that people, you know, it's a sort of
are in the mindset to look at it.
Important for them.
And the loss of, you know, about it being, it's got a very long tail, hasn't it? Stuff that goes on Netflix and Amazon. So they know they're going to get us eventually, so to speak. I'm not, depending on when it actually first becomes available, I'm not sure whether I'll rush not to watch Bake Off because I'm watching Grand Tour, but I'll know fine well I can
catch it
the weekend, or, you know, stack it up and watch the lot for one.
It's a whole new world, Liam. Hardly dreamt of when we started and when there were 4 channels. All those years ago. Well, thank you so much, Liam, for taking the time to join me on this first show. I hope everyone at home has enjoyed listening to me and Liam ramble on to each other about television. Our next show in a month's time will be about Netflix, Sky, and Amazon, and what is called over-the-top television. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this first show, and thank you for watching. Goodbye.